Today, we are significantly more sophisticated in a regular search engine than where we began. 12 months from now, we will be in a very different situation. The promise of what an AI agent can do will be much more realized at that point.
Do you think AI search will replace traditional results entirely or coexist for a while?
The idea that AI replaces SEO and that there's SEO, you don't need to do anything else, that's just insane. I think it's fair to say that AI answers will replace the regular SERP at some point in the future. I don't think replace in this case means that the SERP goes away. I think it just lives in a different spot. Content will always be the critical piece. Now, for all saying, yeah, that's great for me, you need to calm down, because how we present content is going to need to look different than the way you're used to writing.
Welcome to the Agency Insider Show, where we explore ideas shaping the future of marketing and search. I'm your host, Navneet Kaushal, and today's guest is one of the most respected voices in SEO and digital transformation, Duane Forrester. Duane is a veteran of search and digital strategies with over 30 years of experience. He helped launch Bing Webmaster Tool, contributed to schema.org, and held leadership roles at Microsoft, Yext, and Bruce Clay Inc. Today, he's sought after a speaker, writer, and futuristic, helping business navigate the evolution of search and AI. Duane, it's such an honor to have you here, and welcome to the show.
Oh, Navneet, thank you very much. I've been excited to find some time with you all week and get down and start talking about this stuff. It's an amazing time in the industry. At the same time, it's a very confusing time for businesses.
Yes. So let's start with your journey and evolution of search. Now, you had one of the most fascinating careers in search, from Microsoft to, of course, renamed Bing, and now thought leadership in AI. How has your view of search evolved across these time zones, I would say, or timelines?
You know, it's really interesting. When you have a short view across time, you think the things that matter are really important. Okay, so for example, we could call it a period of time where we all believe content was king, where technical SEO was the most important aspect, where solving for core web vitals was the most important thing. And for years at a time, you will believe that those are very important aspects. And the longer that time horizon becomes, 5 years, 7, 10, 20, and so on, for me, the more surprising it is how in any choice that has been made, and this applies to you in your life as well, in every choice you make, there is a direction, and every choice you make changes that direction, and you don't really know the difference because you only know the direction that you are traveling in. And search is kind of like that. From the early days of information retrieval, when we decided we were going to do a direct keyword match, and if it matched on a keyword, that was great. Oh, by the way, if you repeated the keyword 3 times, that meant you were more relevant for the keyword than somebody who only did it twice. And, you know, today we are significantly more sophisticated in a regular search engine than where we began. And as we look toward what we're seeing with these AI platforms, the core concept around what they are trying to do, answer a question, that journey has been a really straight line, and it continues to be a straight line. It's all about the consumer. It's all about their intent. It's all about the right answer in the right context.
Right.
The platforms are changing how people get that. And look, if you really want to dig in, we can talk a lot about how 2026 is going to be an inflection year for all of this, because agents will bring utility, I will say. We have agents today, and everybody who has one brags about how great it is. And it's great at one single thing. It does one thing. If I give you the number 5, put this number 5 in this spreadsheet, and suddenly the number 5 appears in the spreadsheet. Not exactly sure why I'm using an AI agent to accomplish something I could do with a keyboard, but that's where we're at today. And 12 months from now, we will be in a very different situation. The promise of what an AI agent can do will be much more realized at that point. So it won't be put the number 5 in the spreadsheet. It will be, I've started a business. I have my first 2 clients. I need to get budgets aligned. I need to get my tax tracking done. I need to create spreadsheets for all of the information that's available. And the agent will simply say, plug me into your point of sale system.
Right.
And then it will just come up and say, I've created the spreadsheet, I've created the spreadsheet, I've created the spreadsheet. Like, we can do that already with basic Python programming. We can tell a system, in the end, you should have a CSV output, should have these columns. This is where the information should come from, these database tables and columns, and there you go. To a human, it seems like magic because I asked for something and then I got the spreadsheet. Wow, that's magic. I didn't have to do the work. And that's kind of where we're at right now and where we're heading. So I think that the longer the view, the better the understanding. Obviously, it's a very obvious thing for me to say it that way. But when I look back over that whole time, I see a straight line through it all, even though at every instance, every couple of years, we drop down and we do a loop and we come back to the timeline and we keep moving forward. And then we do a loop and we come back to the timeline and keep moving forward. And you can trace all those loops to things like Google algorithm updates. I'll point out very self-servingly, the new Bing Webmaster tools, when they launched, they changed data availability and expectations and all of this kind of thing. Google's had a string of those moments where they have been impactful for SEOs and businesses. I think we're just in the middle of the very beginning of another impactful loop where we will come back up and, you will just be able to ask an agent to accomplish something for you and it will give you the answer. And we're not there yet, but we'll get there.
Because the way I see it, that the web we see might not be there in few years. It's only going to be agentic web.
Well, and it's funny. I talked about this, Navneet, on my Substack, where I literally did a deep dive on when agents replace websites. And I'm not a fan of this. Like, I'm not saying this to try to scare anyone or, make people fearful of some kind of future where AI takes over or anything like that. I just believe in the inherent laziness of humanity, and anything that serves that and makes the human psyche more at ease, getting more for doing less work, will be adopted. And it will be adopted in a huge way. It's why Google search took off in the first place. I no longer had to go to a library or remember any of the websites that had something interesting on them. I just had to remember google.com and then go in and ask it a question. And it got better and better and better at answering that question. And today, it's not just Google, it's Bing, it's OpenAI, it's Claude, it's Perplexity, it's Mistral, it's everybody who has a foot in this world. And it's funny because all of these, I mention all of these, okay? So I'm going to include the group that ultimately was the foundation that became Gemini, all right? Because before Google brought that in, I think it was DeepMind, and DeepMind spun out these things. If you go back and you look at interviews of these people, early interviews, or even current interviews that have them recount the early days, you will hear a common theme that they all felt that they were outcasts, that everybody thought they were crazy for doing what they were doing, right? Like, what's an LLM? Why would you put so much time into doing something that gets 99% of the way and fails? No, it got 99.01% of the way this time and failed. Oh, so 0.01% further. Yes. Like, to them, that was worth pursuing. And many of them did this for the better part of a decade.
Wow.
And now we see what we believe to be an overnight success. Okay. So I think it was like, and I'm guessing at the number, I don't remember it exactly, but you'll understand my point. For OpenAI, they didn't start with ChatGPT 3, right? Like, they literally started with ChatGPT. And the versions up until 3.5, they were kind of crappy and nobody knew about them. And it took like 6 or 7 years of work to reach that point. And then from 3.5 to where we're at today is 3 years of time. And I made a graph about this. I compared how long it took Google to reach mass adoption from when Google.com in 1998, when they came online and they were officially available. It took them 9 years to reach 50% market share in the United States. We're going to call that mass adoption, 50% market share, right? So that's, in real numbers, that's probably somewhere around 170 million users, we'll say, or 150 million users.
Right.
But that would have, at that time, that would have represented mass adoption.
Right.
So for OpenAI and ChatGPT, you have to use a different metric for mass adoption. It has to be something like daily active users or something like this, right? It's not a market share thing. ChatGPT is going to reach 1 billion daily active users in approximately 7 months. So it will have taken them slightly less than half the amount of time to reach the same milestone that Google reached. Now that difference, the graphs look like this, right? Google's nice and slow and easy, right, and then OpenAI is much more vertical. That difference shows us that the adoption of technology is speeding up rapidly, meaning consumers are adopting it. So when you talk about, this is what we're looking at, an agentic future, and we're talking about a lack of websites, we are oversimplifying to make a point when we say those things, but it's also very real, because what's going to happen is that search, and that literal search for my answer, like I'm looking for an answer to my question, the answer moves upstream. It comes before the click, where in traditional search, the answer is after the click. Now, very advanced traditional search, we had answer boxes. So that was 0 click. So you had answer before click, but they were side by side, right? You couldn't separate those things. The answer had the click. It was right there. Now we have an answer in a word bubble floating around with no attribution, no click, no nothing. And I am a consumer that has the answer to my question, and I leave and I go and I drink my cup of tea and I live my day, and that's it.
Right.
To be completely transparent on this, because again, I do not want people thinking that this is like, oh, I should panic and these guys are, being sensationalist about this. All of the work you do as an SEO, all that technical work still needs to happen, will still need to happen when agents, because the agents still need all the data to formulate the answer. It's a different answer layer, not a different knowledge layer. So, really important that folks dig a little deeper on those topics.
Yeah, that's actually very true. But I mean, you might need be making your site based on MD and JSONs, but that's where we are coming.
Oh, look, I'm telling you right now, how we build, what we build, the way we parse content. I don't know who coined the term content is king or content is queen. I don't know. They were right. I don't think they understood how right they were. But content will always be the critical piece. Now, for all you writers out there who are waving your flags around saying, yeah, that's great for me, you need to calm down, because how we present content is going to need to look different than the way you're used to writing. If you're used to writing a long form blog and you're going to be in there with, oh, here's my prose and I've got a really good turn of phrase and I'm really clever, look at me, and is my audience smart enough to understand that nuance? And all of that is irrelevant. All of that is irrelevant to AI. AI is looking at chunks. It is looking for very specific, here is the entity, here is the supporting information, here are things that are related to it, here's signals that make you an authority in relation to that, and it wants all of that in 150 to 200 words. That's a chunk. Move on to the next one. Use your H tags if you want. That's totally fine. You still have to make the page readable by human beings, but the AIs care differently about your content. So if you're precious about how it looks, not the world for you. You've got a bunch of change coming.
Right. Now, when you look back at the early days of SEO, what parallels or warnings do you see for this new AI driven phase?
Okay, well, the first thing, and I think this is fairly obvious, right, is the exploitation. We all of us, right? Navneet, you went through this, I went through this. Bruce has been on the show, he's gone through this. Everybody woke up one day and went, crap, I have to learn something new. It's called AI.
Right.
Oh, what does it even mean? How do I even? And that's where we were, a lot of us, 2 to 3 years ago, right? We
Right.
suspected it was going to have an impact, but there was not an understanding of what it would be. I still maintain, and I will always tell people this: if you want to understand how a system like OpenAI operates, um, just ask ChatGPT to outline the structure of how you build a ChatGPT. It will give you every research paper. It will give you absolutely everything for you to understand embeddings and vectors and every one of these keywords. It will totally uncover all of that for you. And then as you find a topic, you will ask it, and then you'll find the rabbit hole. And now you're starting to learn. It's like going back to university, except your university never closes. It's in front of you 24/7. As long as you are awake and you are attached to your computer, you are learning something new about this. And it is endless because you're right at the beginning, and the people building everything are still learning themselves. So you can find a new paper that came out last week that changes something about a RAG implementation that improves it that we didn't know the week before. And here we are. And it changes how you and I talk about RAG implementations and impacts and whatnot. I really hope that didn't actually happen. That's an example I'm making up, but I live in constant fear that that's actually the world I live in now, where everything I talk about, I publish every week on my Substack. So, like right now, when you and I wrap up, I will go back to writing next week's article. I will get that out on Sunday, and it'll be there. But I always fear that between Tuesday and Saturday, when I'm research and writing, something will have changed that when I publish on Sunday, I missed it on Friday. It's like moving that fast.
Yes.
So I will say to me, I think it's an amazing time to be in this space. So, you asked about what from the old days or original kind of flows through, right? So we've got that exploitation side.
Right.
We also have bad actors where,
Right.
you had people taking advantage of it. And when you and I were prepping, we were joking about this, and it was like the early days was insert a keyword. And if you wanted to matter even more for that keyword, you inserted that keyword 6 times. And then the system thought, oh, you're really important for that. You said it 6 times. And then somehow you ranked higher. We have that today, but in an upcoming keynote that I'll be delivering, I talk a bit about bad actors and how they can poison information and training data. Look,
Right.
it's not like training data is defined. Like there's not a place on the internet where you go that says, oh, this is training data for AIs, and then you go in and you make a mess in there, and then the mess goes into the AI and it outputs garbage. Everything is the training data. So let's say I don't like, I love apples. Let's say I don't like apples and I really want to hurt apples. What I will do is I will go and I will spin up 10, 20, 100,000 fake articles about why apples are bad, right? Apples poison Snow White. Apples, if they're in water, they're hard to get out if you don't have hands. Like make up all this stuff, but make it sound negative about apples. You
Right.
publish all that out there, it becomes a part of the training data set because it's
Yeah.
on the internet. And then when I am Big Apple and I am having a campaign launching, hey, it's fall, the new crop is here, you all should enjoy more apples. When I'm trying to do all of that, the AI system is pulling in tainted data that says apples are bad. And when I ask the question, where's the Apple Festival near me? Part of the answer might be, well, the Apple Festival is 2 towns away from you, but you should really think carefully about going there because apples have been known to murder people. And you're like, well, I, where did that come from? So that type of thing exists, and studies and researchers have proven that it's possible. Now, to counter that, something that in the early days we had we had a place called DMOZ, the Open Directory Project.
We all know
Right.
that.
Okay. So that's going back a while. I was for a brief period of time an editor with them, like for like a week or something. And then we Wikipedia and this kind of thing. And I bring these up because these were seen as early sources of trust. Like
Right.
Google trusted if you were in DMOZ, the link and gave it higher authority than some other random link on the internet, right? So that gave you more value. Today, we see that same sort of thing approaching on our horizon, meaning there has to be a way for there to be a validation error, a validation layer or a verification layer. And I know that, again, you can just research all this, it's out there. If you know to look for it, if you start down these rabbit holes, you find these things. OpenAI, Anthropic, Perplexity, I know Microsoft, Google, they're all working on a concept called universal verifiers. And a universal verifier, in its most simplistic version, is an LLM that fact checks another LLM, which may seem kind of weird since LLMs hallucinate. So it's like a liar validating a liar. I don't know if that's going to work, except one liar is incapable of lying. So you may have seen some of this, right? Like researchers have figured out that they can stop hallucinations. And in fact, if you go really deep in a topic, in a subject, and you create a very tight box, hallucinations are limited. Like, because
Yes.
it won't happen, right? Like if the information is tight. But when you look at the corpus of the internet, that's a really big box. Hallucinations are going to happen. And the universal verifier's job is to no hallucinate everything prior to reaching the LLM, which writes the answer for you and I, has to be validated and verified. So, for example, if you ask ChatGPT to, go find 5 articles on the internet that support this idea, you think you're doing a good job, that you're using a research assistant, that it's going to go and do all that grunt work, bring back that information, then you will consume the information, and you will be able to write something logical. And then you get the answer back, and you click on the first link, and it's a 404 page, and you click on the second one. You get to the 5th one, and it's still a 404 page, and you ask it, did you invent all those? And it said, yes, I thought this was a theoretical exercise, and you just wanted something that might look like it was a solution. And no, you idiot. I wanted actual things.
Right.
That doesn't happen with universal verifiers. They come with the knowledge to look for 200 OKs, not 404s, and to reject 404s, and to reject anything that it has a source that originates from itself. So if it creates a, Duane.com / great dog father, then it won't reference that as it passes data through to the LLM because it knows it created that. So this concept of a universal verifier is really powerful. There's maybe alpha versions running right now. They're not even beta at this stage. But when those start to hit and you have agents, you're starting to see a really powerful combination of a lot less mistakes, consumer adoption going up because humans are lazy, and marketers are kind of stuck in here trying to figure out, oh wait, what do I say now? Because I have to be factually accurate. You can't use too much hyperbole. You'll get filtered out by a verifier because it sounds like it's too much, or you made the claim but there's no way to prove it, right? Like if I told you I was the best barbecue cook in America, oh, you'd be like, hey, I want to come to your house, let's cook. But you really wouldn't try to verify that I am the best. And if I kept saying that I was the best, at some point, someone would ask me, have you been rated in this magazine? Has anyone, have you been in competitions? What have you won? What awards do you have? Because these are all indicators of best. And without me providing that, I get filtered out by that universal verifier. So there's a lot, right? And if you want to dig back to, how we originally started and we were laying things out in an H1, H2, H3 manner because it was easy for us to collate that information, publish it, and read it. That now matters again. Things like not so far back structured data, more important than ever. Like it's all of those things from even the earliest days still provide value in the AI world today.
Right. Now, moving on to our next segment, which is the, of course, AI research. AI search, we covered most of it, but
Mhm.
some parts still left. So, what's the biggest misconception marketers have about AI search right now?
Oh, where to begin? Okay, so I think my favorite head scratcher right now, it's kind of like there's a bunch of them in one bucket in my mind.
Okay.
The idea that we're having conversations and we're arguing amongst ourselves in the industry about, oh, no, 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 no. AI doesn't deliver all the traffic. Google still delivers all the traffic. So stay focused on Google. The idea that something cannot catch up and overtake, where Google itself caught up to all of the original search engines and crushed them. This idea and this sense of a lack of understanding of history, or apparently of how technology moves forward, is
Right.
shocking to me, because we all, most of us, lived through that, and yet we forget it. If you're younger, I can understand you didn't live through that as a part of your career, but it's there for you to research and understand. And if you skip that step, you will make mistakes. The idea that something will replace something wholesale, that is just a bit crazy to me. It's going to look like it did, but that's not what's happening. So the idea that AI replaces SEO and that there's SEO, you don't need to do anything else, that's just insane, because we're still talking about basic information retrieval here. The systems need this information, and they need it in a very specific way to do the most with it. And those who adapt, like those who adopted SEO, and now it's mainstream. But I remember when it was first starting and people would ask me what I did, and I would say SEO, and they would just be like, I've never heard of that. I don't know what that is. And then they would say, oh, you work on the internet. How cool is that? And it's like, yeah, I work on the internet. That's what I do. You know, I show up every day on the internet, and I sit there and I've got a yellow vest on, I've got a hard hat on, and I work on the internet. That's what I do. Sure. Now you can talk to almost anyone and mention SEO, and they will say, oh, I've heard of that. They don't understand it. They don't really know it, but they've heard of it. And so the idea that what we're doing, this AI optimization work, is going to replace SEO is insane. It is merely a layer on top. Think of it as you've graduated high school, now you're going to college. You graduated college, now you're going to university. You're graduating university, now you're going on to get a PhD. That's what we're doing here. We're not looking at this saying, well, I graduated high school. I guess what I'm going to do here is I'm going to swallow a pill that's going to add proteins in my brain, and I'm suddenly going to have new knowledge, and I didn't have to study for it. No, that's not what's happening. So it's I think that's probably my biggest disconnect, right? There's an awful lot going on, and my fear is that I see people getting very deep into a rabbit hole, like the rabbit hole itself is the whole conversation. And that's just not the case.
All right. Now, do you think AI search will replace traditional results entirely or coexist for a while?
Well, this is really interesting, right? I'd love to give a yes or no answer on this, because, I'd like to have clarity myself on it, right? But if you look at what's going on with Google, I think it's fair to say that AI answers will replace the regular SERP at some point in the future. I don't think replace in this case means that the SERP goes away. I think it just lives in a different spot. It's maybe a click deeper. You have to look a
Right.
little more to find it. And that's just, you train humans to go find that information. And then those who want it will still continue to go there. It may end up being a default setting where you can tell Google when you're logged in, I want traditional search and AI, or I want AI and traditional search, or I want one or the other, not both. Like, it could just be a setting like that. And then we see how users vote, and I'm pretty sure what's going to happen is the older you are, the more you're going to want what you used to have. And the younger you are, the more you're going to want the new things. And that's a fairly common thing. But then we go look at somebody like Look at somebody like Claude or, OpenAI. In order for what I just described from Google to be our future, these other companies would actually have to add a search results page, the 10 blue links. I'm pretty sure they're not going to do that. There's no upside to maintaining that infrastructure. And
Right.
when you already have 1 billion active daily users, why would you give them something old when you can give them something new? And so in that sense, that change will exist in that if you choose to get all of your questions answered by Claude or ChatGPT, you are choosing to move away from SERPs as a consumer. And I think we are going to see that. I think the idea of market share in search is going to become much less important because the volume of the market that traditional search serves is going to shrink. And that will just happen naturally over time. Still going to be valuable for businesses, still going to be worth maintaining your presence. But this is the takeaway. The takeaway is we have lived for 20 plus years now in the luxury of being able to do our work one time and have it impact multiple locations. So I do the work for Google, it works in Bing, it works in Yahoo, it works everywhere else, right? That felt pretty good. I remember early days, everybody was freaking out like, oh, do I have to figure out how to do this with Bing? And then how do I prioritize? And, do I prioritize for Yahoo or Google or like who gets my, no. It's all the same. You just do these work, follow these best practices and it all works out. We have to reinvent what that means now with these new systems because every one of these systems, while Google and Bing and Yahoo's algorithms and DuckDuckGo and everybody else, their algorithms are different.
Right.
Generally speaking, the results are the same, which means they follow similar paths to solving similar problems.
Right.
These new systems, the system itself often determines the path it uses to solve the problem being the question that was asked. The difference here is that how the weighting in these models is stacked is not just different from OpenAI and its weighting to Google and its algorithm. Its weighting at OpenAI is different than Gemini's weighting, than Claude's weighting, than everyone else's weighting, which is why there's a Bright Edge study out that shows 62% of queries, same query, 62% of the time, it's different answer in these things. And that reason is because of the weighting. And if you look then at the companies behind these, OpenAI is trying to move in a direction where they're a public company and they are a for-profit entity. It wasn't where they started, but that's where they're going. If you look at Claude and Anthropic are much more aligned with having systems that help humanity. Right. That's a very different approach philosophically than lining up for business and making money. I'm sure Anthropic wants to make money. I'm sure they do. Okay. But philosophically, if you're thinking differently, then the decisions you make and the directions you choose will have an impact, which means your model weights will be different. So your answers will be different. So now we're living in an age of, hey, are you an SEO? Yeah, great. Now you've got 6 times the work to do. You literally woke up about 2 years ago and you had 6 times the amount of work to do because how you position yourself as an entity for Claude differs a little bit from OpenAI. And just before anybody sends in an email or asks the question, no, we have no idea what the weighting looks like. It's not shared. It's proprietary. It will never be shared. You can build your own weighting models in systems like Weaviate and using Pinecone and these types of platforms. You can build your own ChatGPT clone where then you have to decide what your weighting is. And if you look to the enterprise search world, they have AI-powered systems, and some of those systems have disclosed base weight lines. So if you are going to run an enterprise-level AI search platform internally, these companies have said, we can give you that platform, and here's what we recommend as a starting point for the weights across all these areas. And then you can adjust up and down to better perform and fine tune your instance. So if you gather all of that information, you can make something that looks and acts like ChatGPT. Will it answer the same? Oh, hell no, because you have no idea what the weights are. And that's where these companies spent the first decade of their existence working on ChatGPT 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3, and so on. So it's a lot of work, a lot of work in front of us.
Yes, I'm sure it's might be getting confusing for people, but that's how it is the world right
It
now.
was confusing when we had SEO in the early days. If you think back, how many times would somebody ask us a question? You were standing with a group of people, you were at a conference, and you would start answering the question, and you were like, I'm remembering. Okay, there, I feel pretty good about that. And the person right next to you would say, hey, let's not forget. And they would list 3 more things, and you're like, damn it, I knew that, but I forgot that. Like, we're right back to that again. That's where we're at today, right?
And multiply it by 6.
And I will say this though, we have a lot more community today than we had then, right? We didn't have Zoom, we didn't have virtual conferences, we didn't have all this stuff in communities. We didn't have the ability to reach out on LinkedIn and say, can I connect with you? Can you answer this question for me so that I can move forward? Like, none of that existed. And today we do have all of that. So like, I talk about like, you're going to have 6 times more work. I think you can keep up. I think the tools, the systems, access to knowledge, it is all accelerated as well to put you, to make you able to do this. I will offer this caution though. If you are not willing to use these tools and learn these tools and explore the very edges of these tools, you will struggle to keep up. That is true.
That is true.
Right? That is very real.
That is. Because at that time, we had was something with Webmaster World, and you could visit it. We did nothing.
That was it. And you remember your first conference. You remember walking in and that feeling of, holy cow, I'm not alone. Like, all these people speak my language. Like,
right.
And now I look at people. I spoke to a university back in Canada, back where I come from, and I spoke to them 2 days ago. And the class is learning. They are an online only class, and they are right now learning about SEO and AI. That's the program that they're studying. And I'm like, I wish I'd had anything even remotely close to this when I was in school. I mean, how much farther ahead would I have been then? But this is where we are today.
Right. Now, what kind of businesses tend to gain the most or lose the most from this AI-powered search interfaces?
This one's really hard. Everyone, because the real problem that we face here is that the thin content hurts you when it comes to getting chunked and then including a database and being put through as an answer. But we have to understand that the systems are capable of knowing the difference between an e-commerce page, which naturally has thin content, and a recipe, for example, which could have thin content if you didn't explain it well. And I believe the systems are capable of discerning this difference, right? I think we've seen this. OpenAI has moved to include more e-commerce things, so you can actually do product purchasing through them now in their answers. I think that products are going to gain. I think that if you're an e-com company, you're going to see some real gains in this area as a result of this. I mean, 1 billion people daily using something, looking for products. I think that what's going to happen is how people disseminate their information and the value they place on a website is going to naturally evolve. I love that people might come to my website and look at it. I really don't care about them looking at my personal consulting website. I really don't care what my traffic numbers look like or any of my Google reports. What I care about is that people are reaching out to me either through my phone number, through my email, through my LinkedIn. I care that that's happening. And that's a great thing to focus on because I might get mentioned, but not cited. So a citation has a link. A mention is just you're mentioned. You might get paraphrased, so you're included as a part of it, but again, the person doesn't know who you are in relation to it. I want all three of these things to be happening, because all three of these things are directionally aligned with getting me business. And I don't have the luxury then really of saying, well, I'm going to build a website and I'm going to tweak that website for the next 6 months. And then every year I'm going to refresh the website and I'm going to do this. I'm right now actually working on a personal project, and I've got the React version of it up on the website, and I'm looking at it and I'm like, I want to change that. I want to change that. I want to change that. I want to do this. And so I make a note of all the things that I want it to be and do and look like and whatever else. And then I hand all that to Claude and I say, write me the code. And it comes back and goes, here's the file. And I transfer the file to the production server and I hit refresh and everything's there. And I'm like, ah, crap. You know what? I really wanted this and I want this. And this, PDF link doesn't work. We need to fix that. And you keep overwriting the title tag. Like, let's, make that persistent. And this is the title I want. And it's a whole lot faster to iterate with these things. And that means that you can get to what your goal is faster. Right. You don't have to be as precious because I look at a lot of websites and I see there's a lot of Flash, not Flash, the programming stuff, but it's flashy. Right. There's a lot of we have, big shiny photos of people and we have this and we have that and all this other stuff. And I'm like, no. Get rid of all that. Make it look like a page of paper in a typewriter. It's super simple. It's super clean. The images are well placed, but they're small, and just keep it concise. That, I think, is where we end up. And it becomes a new design language. It becomes a new design direction. All of the work still has to be done. So you still need designers, you still need programmers, you still need, SEOs, you still need all that. But we are going to see this. And I think that small businesses are going to benefit from AI because they're going to get pulled forward as long as they are factual, accurate, and on point. They provide utility, that AI is going to pull them forward. I think that you have to be consistent. So businesses that are consistent, that's going to matter. So you need to post every week, every 3 or 4 days. You need to be putting this stuff out because the systems are looking for recency. And as they find recent things and believe they're trustworthy, right, they touch them more frequently. So it's a self-reinforcing thing, right? If you can get in, it's easier to stay in. And then the opportunity then, if you're a smart marketer, is, well, if I get in on one topic, can I get in on a second related topic and a third related topic? And so now you're talking about, because the machine is doing query fan out to bring the answer in, you use query fan out to determine where the machine's going to go next and answer that. So you're waiting in line. Like, it's, again, 6 times more work.
But it's 6 times easier, I would say, because now you have access to
it kind of is. Yeah, I agree.
Right. Now, let's talk about the skill gap. We already spoke that the marketers aren't ready, but you've been vocal about how marketers are not being trained for what's next. Now, where are the biggest gap right now?
Well, I'll tell you right now that most SEOs that are out there, they're getting jobs. If you just look at job descriptions, the skills that are being hired for are not leaning in the direction that supports success in AI environments. What you see at best is a job description that says familiarity with AIs, ChatGPT, Perplexity. Right. And then they talk about keyword research, they talk about content development, they talk about technical SEO skills, they talk about all these things that they found online on a checklist, copied and pasted into the job description. Right. We are not at a point where people have those skills and they are demonstrable from an AI optimization standpoint. We are still trying to figure it out. So you don't have practitioners out there that have this on their resume. The problem we have is we hire people, and 2 years from now, we are going to be saying to them, I hope you've been learning all the new stuff about AI along the way, because now I need you to fix us with the AIs. And look, anybody you hire who's doing SEO, if you ask them if they can do that, they're going to say, oh, absolutely. And then when you ask them to explain the difference, I'm guessing, but I'm going to say it's a very high percentage. 80 to 90% of those people will say, oh, it's the same as regular SEO. It's just applied to AI. And if you're the hiring manager and you don't know any different, you will think that's a good answer and you will hire somebody who doesn't have the skills to make the impact right now. Luckily for them, they will be able to research this stuff and look it up and learn it very quickly. And then they actually run into the far larger problem, which is internal friction. Because as an SEO, I often don't have the ability to go in and make the code level change myself. I have to go to my IT or my devs. And if that organization inside your company is not already aligned to support AI, they will push back. And now you still have the familiar problem that SEOs have, except everything outside you is moving much faster. So, like, we're not teaching these things because companies are not set up to teach their employees. They don't know how to teach this. They're not even teaching SEO skills when they hire them. They're just assuming you're going to go learn them. But we're still at the very beginning of all of the teaching. We're still learning. Like, it's easy with traditional SEO. Nothing's really changing anymore. It's pretty much static. So it's easy for us to quote all the things we know that matter, and for someone to go do that work. There's time for them to catch up. But again, I'm going to bring you back to that time to mass adoption. ChatGPT is doing that twice as fast as Google, and it's not waiting for you to figure out how to optimize. So you really have to be a self-learner now as a career choice. If this is what you're doing, that's it. You're learning every day for the rest of your life. You're learning. It's new. And you can't get angry when it changes and it's new and something's different. You just have to accept it, learn it, and move on. That's the reality.
Now, how should agencies rethink hiring and training for the next generation of marketing roles?
I think this is a really important question because this is where you can take an action that matters, right? So when you're hiring someone, it makes perfect sense that you might hire somebody who doesn't have a lot of knowledge in this area. You want to know, like, look, I run a consultancy. So if I'm hiring somebody, okay, here's what I want to see. I want to see that that person has a paid subscription to Claude and ChatGPT, because I want to see that they are committed and able to push realistic limits in these systems. I obviously have paid subscriptions to both of these things. I have had conversations with customer support human beings at OpenAI who have described what I do when I've shared my logs with them because of problems. They have described what I do as an edge case, meaning not a lot of their users are doing what I'm doing. And they tell me that I am a power user. I am pushing the boundaries of what the system is capable of doing.
Okay.
Look, I don't think anything I'm doing is that big a deal. Okay. But here's why I'm asking for this when you're coming to interview with me and I'm looking to hire you. If you don't know that Claude has a 100 upload limit for images, and then you have to actually move to a different conversation and it loses context between the conversations. So now you lose time retraining it and grounding it in the new conversation. If you don't know that that exists and you haven't experienced that, which, by the way, when you get to about 60 or 65 images in there, browsers can't handle it because it renders the entire thing over and over again. So that means every question and answer back and forth takes approximately 3 to 4 minutes to complete. It's like having a conversation with someone on the moon. So now we're talking about a hit to productivity. If you don't inherently know these things, you are a less valuable hire to me. But if you have the $20 a month paid account, that tells me you're serious enough that I can get you to push these limits and learn these things and figure out ways to be more productive even with that. That's the type of thinking that agencies need to apply when they're hiring people. Problem-solving skills, specific problems. Oh, look, you want to talk to me about SEO? Great. That's awesome. I didn't even hear what you said. If I were hiring for that, you got the job. Now let's talk about, your philosophy with AI, where you think it's going. I'd look for questions like these and I'd ask them and say, what should the answer be? If I'm hiring, I'm going to Claude and ChatGPT. I'm asking the questions and saying, what's the most thoughtful answer someone can give to this? I'm taking both of those, going in, writing a document, deduplicating it, handing it back to each one of those and saying, is this accurate and how can we refine it? And then take that output. And when you go into the interview, you ask that question. And if their answer isn't something around what you're talking about, if it goes completely off, you know they're not the right person. If they're in the ballpark, even if they don't give you the exact answer, at least you know, okay, I can work with you. But the single most important thing the agency's got to do is it's got to set aside time and resources for training in an active fashion.
Right.
Because you can't ask someone to work 10 hours a day and then expect them to go home and study for another 4 hours to learn things and then show up the next day and give you the value of that added time, that added knowledge, while they work 10 hours for you. You will burn through people and they will realize, oh, I could just go do this on my own and keep 100% of the profit for myself. And that's why we have 44 billion consultants in SEO today. I believe that. I believe there are more SEO consultants on earth than there are human beings. And
that number I was trying to get right.
Right. Like it's some crazy balance like that. However, I think it's, with a little bit of work, it's relatively easy to get the right people hired. You do have to go remote today. You can't just look locally. It's not, that's a fact.
Right. But the only problem we specifically here face two problems. One, the professionals who use AI, they think AI is there to solve a problem. So I have people who ask all the questions from AI. Okay, this is the problem. This is a solution they are looking for. That's not what you can use AI for. That's one thing which I see. And second, which I see is that we have a lot of remote people as well as employees in the office. But the problem with the remote people is they are not into a self-learning mode. In the office, I can force them to learn. So my only challenge right now is specifically, I don't know about much in the US. I have almost all the employees in India, but the challenge is they just think AI is a magic wand and not something. So that's
Absolutely.
the only problem which I see. Is it the same way in the US?
It is. So what you have a lot of is unqualified people trying to use an AI to appear more qualified. And, my wife handles recruiting for the company she works with. And she sees this from time to time, not all the time, not frequently, but from time to time. It's obvious when someone's using an AI to answer questions. And, like she just cuts the interview off and says, look, this isn't going to work. This isn't how we hire people. Thanks for your time. Goodbye. But it's very true. People need to understand, and I think this is part of your interviewing process, right? Like, how do you use AI? And you have to ask this like 3 or 4 different ways, right? If you look at how the Myers-Briggs personality system is, or the Insights training system is, they ask essentially the same question like 9 different ways. So it doesn't matter how you answer it, your average comes out, right? You kind of have to approach things that way when you're asking people about AI, because you definitely need to understand, are you it's a magic wand person, or are you going to use your own ideas and thought processes and use the system to speed that up and help with research? 2 very different approaches here, right? Like, one is go into the lab and invent something for me. And the other is, I am the inventor, you're my assistant, hand me the screwdriver. You don't need a screwdriver, you need a wrench. Oh, you're right, give me the wrench. Like, it's a very different approach to using these things. And I think that you can interview, if you do the right questions, you can get an understanding of what type of person they are, how they're using it, right? Because if you ask them, look, even somebody who's using free versions of these things can be good. Like I say, I want people who are using, paid versions. That's just me with a filter. You take that away, you can get good people who are used to using the free versions and they get good results. But it's because they're using those versions to augment their own thinking and their own critical decision making. If they're using it to come up with an answer, well, I mean, I'm sure you saw the news this week where the large consultancy had to refund $444,000 because
the Australian government,
Oh yeah, like when you ask ChatGPT to prepare the report for the Australian government to hand it to them, there could be some errors in there.
That's the kind of employee I'm trying to avoid.
Exactly. And I mean, look, I really don't like to, speak negatively about anybody, but there's an employee who thought they were using AIs correctly. They thought they were using it, and they believed that what was happening was the wave showed up, and I am a professional surfer all of a sudden. Look at me, perfectly balanced. I look great. Everything is moving at warp speed. I don't have to, it's effortless. That's what they thought AI was going to do for them
Right.
because they assumed that's what AI was doing for everybody else around them.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
and what they didn't realize is the people that are actually making progress with AI are simply not sleeping and not watching any television. Every minute of every day is spent using these systems as the assistants they are to
Right.
actually develop a core idea and move it forward.
Right.
Like that, the work still has to be done, is the point. There is no shortcut here. And
Right.
and so like you have to be screening for and hiring for that. Now, look, your point, people who are working remotely aren't into learning. You know what? I agree. I mean, not as a generalized statement. I think it's over simplistic the way we're presenting it here. However, it's true that if you show up at the office, I can tell you for your first 2 hours, the only thing I want to see you doing is reading. I want you to be learning something new or something in addition to what you learned yesterday. It's all you do for the first 2 hours at work. And then for the next 6 hours, I need you to be really productive. That's how we work around here. You know what? That's easy to do in an office setting. And most people who show up to work, they'll love that because
Absolutely.
the first couple hours is easy. And, people are like, oh, I had to finish something up. So I didn't get to it till 10. So I'm going to read till noon and then I have lunch. Like, I really don't care. Like, it's just continual learning matters. And I give you time to do it and you do it and you're happy and I'm happy and work gets done. When people are at home, like I want you to continually learn. I want you to learn something new once a week. You're going to stand up in the meeting. You're going to tell me what you learned. So 5 minutes before the meeting, it's going to go into a spreadsheet. They're going to open up the spreadsheet and they're going to take one idea. They're going to hand it to ChatGPT and they're going to say, expand this to 400 words for me. And they're going to put it in the spreadsheet. And then they're going to say, hey, everybody, here's what I learned this week. Let me share my spreadsheet. And then someone else in the meeting is going to say, that's genius. You have a spreadsheet. You track all this. Can I have that? Yeah, I'll share that with you. Reinforcing a negative action. And there it goes, right? But again, I think what ends up happening is you end up like, you'll learn over time those people who aren't investing, and you'll learn how to remove them from the mix and then how to hire someone different and bring it in, right? The other side of this as well, Navneet, that I think is incredibly important, right? If you've got somebody who's doing repetitive work and that repetitive work can be managed by somebody but done by an AI system or an agent, we are on the very edge of that being a
Yes.
reasonable solution, right? And this doesn't replace work. Like this doesn't
Right.
replace jobs.
No, it doesn't.
I still need you to run the AI agent to do
Right.
the work and then
Right.
validate it. But you don't have to do the boring part of doing the work.
Right.
You're a supervisor. And just like a human supervisor, you might have 10 or 12 AI agents that you are responsible for. So you need to make sure they run. You need to give them direction. You need to give them guidance and refinement. You need to capture the output. You need to update the reporting. You need to validate that reporting. And then you need to send that reporting. What you don't have to do is spend any of your time running around gathering all the little bits and details and thinking things up and constructing the verbiage and writing out the explanation of what these numbers and charts represent in the real world. You don't have to do any of that. And that's the crap that humans burn out on.
Right.
You give a human the ability to run a half a dozen robots and tell them your job is run these agents, verify their output, and you will be judged on how accurate their information is and how successful our clients are. You tie that in so they actually have to do the validation portion of this.
Right.
You will not get sued by the Australian government. You will produce good quality work. You will have good people, and you won't continually learning because the only thing they have to continually learn is some new command to give the robot. And that I believe that sometime in our next 18 months, we're going to be able to start seeing that type of thing become a reality for us. And honestly, As somebody who has managed people before and as somebody who was an individual contributor before,
Mhm.
I'm looking forward to having, like, I used to hate asking my SEOs when I was running the program at MSN that they have to go do basic keyword research because I knew their time per hour was so much more valuable than that. But it was foundational. It had to happen. They had to go do
Right.
it, you know?
Somebody has to do the dirty work, right?
Right now, I can just offload that to an agent, or in the future, I can offload that to an agent and say, just make sure the agent gets it done right and check it. And they're responsible for the checking. If the work is crap, they get fired. Because if your people do crap work, you as the manager get fired.
Right. Now, just we are almost hitting 1 hour mark, and I have some questions. So I just want to know how much more time we have.
I actually have to wrap up shortly. I've got about 2, maybe 3 minutes left, and then I need to wrap up.
Okay, I'll then just ask the very, very important questions. And you said some professionals will exit the industry and others will reskill. What will define who survives this transition?
Your ability and desire to adapt and adopt to all of these new technologies. If
Okay.
you want to hold on to only the old way and you want to fight for that, okay, you will go down with that ship. Everyone
Okay.
else is going to grow wings and fly away.
Okay. Uh, Trust signals seems to matter more than ever to AI and search algorithm. What are the top trust signals marketers should start amplifying right now to remain visible and credible?
So, okay, so trust signals are kind of a mixed bag, right? They do matter now. They will matter in the future. But we're talking about things like using structured data. So schema.org, OG, whatever you happen to be
Mm.
using, that's great. We are definitely talking about things like timestamps, and if you are an author, and if you have a certification somewhere. And trust signals are also about showing sources. So if you say something, you need to show the source to back up what you're saying. If I say the sun is 1,000 degrees Celsius, then I should be linking to something, a NASA paper, an Arbex article, something that backs up the fact that my claim that the sun's 1,000 degrees is accurate. And so it's looking for these discrete things, right? There are lists starting to come up about what these trust signals are, but these trust signals extend not just to something you add like structured data, but also to the information you put in. So your content, right? Where a lot of times I see this on blogs. They don't put timestamps on things. They don't put author names on things. They want to attribute it to the business. They want it to seem like it's evergreen. Fail. Not going to work with these new systems. So like all of these things become a trust signal, right? It's not like I got a check mark from the Better Business Bureau, and that's a trust signal. It is, and you should look for things like that and incorporate them. But you have to be able to prove it. So these universal verifiers, if you put a fake check mark on your website, they will do the work to go look you up in the database to see if you actually earned that or if you stole that check mark. And if they cannot find that you are in the public database of that organization as an accredited member, they will ignore that. And if you do that enough, possibly, we don't know what this looks like yet, but maybe penalties. I don't know. But just being ignored is enough of a penalty, because being ignored means you don't show up. So
Right,
it's
right,
like the penalty is zero. You get nothing. That's the
right.
penalty.
Now, what new business model do you think will emerge around agent-driven discovery?
Oh, I think there is going to be a massive white label marketplace for solving specific issues
Okay.
related to businesses. So I want you to think about every business on earth. I want you to think about all the things they have in common.
Mm.
And now, based on the category of business, only the things that would be common to businesses in that category. And now, within that category, only the things common to the businesses within a region participating in that category. So you see how we get, like, we split and we split and we split, we get narrower and narrower and narrower. We are going to see white label solutions for problems that matter in narrow niches that will literally be vibe coded by an individual, stood up online, white labeled by an agency who serves a particular niche. And they'll do that over and over again. And the agency doesn't care if the agency has 15 subscriptions to 15 individual tools that each do one thing exceptionally well. They don't care about those 15 because every month that cost is multiplied by 10 and then split across 100 clients. So it's fractional, the cost of all the subscriptions.
Right.
But every one of those subscriptions with a single person behind it is sitting there saying, great, I'm making $20,000 a month. Great business for me. And you're looking at it going, it's reliable, it's trustworthy. I give this to my clients and they love it because we own this niche. So I think that's a huge opportunity for a lot of businesses.
Okay. Now, if a listener runs an agency, how can they start experimenting with agentic workflow today?
Okay. Look, I've gone down this path, right? I personally recommend understanding this from the bottom up. Okay. Like if you buy a used car and you have it repainted, it's going to look beautiful, right? And you will say, I love this car. It's beautiful. That's very different than if you buy a used car and take it to a restoration shop and they completely disassemble it. And then you help them reassemble the entire car. You have essentially built a brand new car, even though it's an old car. Okay.
Right.
You will know everything about it. So if you hear a squeak or a rattle, you'll know what it is. You'll know why it's happening. You'll know whether you need to worry about it, all of that. Okay. And I bring this up because there's two ways to do this. There is a platform called N8N. I think a lot of people have heard about it, right? It's really good at like, here's a start point, here's a connector, do this, if this, then this, and so on. And you can do that. I think Zapier does a similar type of thing. And I've gone down that path. And let me tell you, it's really good at standing up concepts really fast to understand what's happening. For me, it maxed out fairly quickly. Once you started to get complex, which I didn't think was complex, but it turns out it is. When you start splitting information and have two parallel rows processing at the same time, it doesn't always pick both and run them. It picks one over the other, and then there's a fail. Obviously, that's a problem if you're writing to a third-party database, which, hey, look, we just brought third-party databases into the conversation now. You're going to have to go and sign yourself up and learn how to use Supabase or Pinecone or Weaviate. I say them in that order because Supabase will do 90% of what you need and is relatively easy to approach. Pinecone will do 70% of what you need, but that 70% is way, way more in depth than what Supabase gives you. But it's much harder to utilize and it doesn't do as much as Supabase. And then there's Weaviate, which essentially would allow you to build your own ChatGPT. So good luck with that, because that feels like an awful lot of learning. And I say good if people want to go down that path. N8N is a great framework for starting on something to get conceptually, to take it off your whiteboard and see it and watch it connect in the real world. You're still going to need the databases. You're still going to have to learn about embeddings. You're still going to have to learn about vectors. You're still going to have to learn about a metric crap ton of stuff that has nothing to do with what you think about as SEO.
Right.
And all of that will get you your own query fan out tool, where you will give it 5 things and it will ping your OpenAI API and it will bring back 200 examples of what they match, and it will give you a relative vector scoring against yours versus them, so you know which ones are closer and farther away. So anyone can do these things right now. And I encourage an agency, pick an idea and go make it happen. It shouldn't take you more than a week to get something that actually works, right? I mean, a few hours even, where you look at it and go, I got a notebook. Look at that. I have a CSV. I have an actual file on my computer now that did what I wanted to do. That can take as little as a few hours. So it's worth exploring these ideas. And then you can look at that and say, what does that do to my workflow? Does that speed up my workflow? Because if this gives me more efficiency, then that means I can take on 2 more clients, which means I can hire another person. And you see this ratcheting up, right? And it's a really powerful approach to things. But along the way, you're going to learn a whole lot, right? And I'll tell you right now, get used to spending time coding in Python. and doing a lot of file transfers. Get yourself a virtual server somewhere and go. That's
Okay.
that is the advice I'm giving everyone right now.
Okay. Last two questions of my show.
Yeah.
One, which is your favorite LLM right now?
Oh, it's funny. I would have said up till about 2 weeks ago, I would have said ChatGPT 5. I'm all in. But I've been using Claude a lot lately, and I think I'm starting to prefer it.
Is it for code or content? What do you prefer
code.
in Claude?
Definitely for code. Content, I'm still all about ChatGPT, but for code, I'm all about Claude.
Okay. And one question I'm sure everybody would love to get an answer. A book or resource you would recommend to every marketers or in SEO right now?
Okay, so I'm going to look across my office here because I am halfway through a book called Competing in the Age of AI. And I don't remember the author, but the name of the book is Competing in the Age of AI. I'm halfway through it. I'm loving it. It's got great ideas. Definitely take a look at it. On top of that, I happen to know Eric Engie, big name in the SEO industry.
I had it on
Eric
my post.
just released a book, so absolutely go check that out. It's worth it. Absolutely.
Right.
So between those two, that's a great start.
Is there any other AI course which you recommend for people who are transitioning from SEO to AI? Is there a resource which they can subscribe?
It's funny. Look, I went and took a bunch of AI courses online, and they're good. I mean, they give you, the verbiage and the vocabulary and all these types of things, and they give you good ideas and whatnot. I'm going to tell you right now, go to your favorite LLM and tell it that you want a training curriculum for these topics, and this is what you're hoping to learn, and this is what you want to use the output for. And it will go ahead and it will create a curriculum for you and give you links to all the resources you need. I'm telling you, the number one thing that people can do today to help their careers is treat that LLM like it is an intern. Make it do the work for you, and it will do it happily, instantly. And you're like, oh, this is the best. So if you want YouTube videos, tell it you want videos. If you want research documents, tell it you want research documents. You just tell it and it will build the curriculum, and you will learn your way every time. And you'll learn a lot faster that way.
All right, with that, we came to the end of our show, Duane, and thank you so much for joining me and sharing your perspective. And of course, this has been an eye-opening discussion about the future of AI, search, and skilled marketers needs to stay ahead. And for our listeners, we'll link to the Duane newsletter, Duane Forrester Decodes, and his latest talks in the show notes. And I sure you said you have a Substack also, so I would love
that is my Substack. You're talking about my Substack right now. So
okay. Is it free to subscribe, or is it
free to subscribe?
Oh, right after the show, I'm the first one subscribed.
Awesome. Thank you, Nabi.
Yes. And if you enjoyed this episode, subscribe and leave us a review. It helps us keep this conversation going. Until next time, keep adopting, keep experimenting, and keep preparing for what's next. Thank you.